Welcome to another edition of Power Lunch. I'm your host, Frederick Douglass Bussey. Super excited to be here with you. Got a great guest for you today as well. For those of you who want to know how to build an incredible business, 7-8 figure business, we're going to talk to somebody who has had a tremendous amount of success in the entrepreneurial space. He's building another business now as well, helping people to continue to gain influence and to grow their brands. But I'm really excited about everything that we're going to be talking about today, and I can't wait to get to it. So why wait? Let's go. Welcome to Power Lunch. I'm your host, Frederick Douglass Bussey. I'm excited to talk to you today. I'm so excited I can't get my tongue to work. So we're as back as always with another great entrepreneurial interview, talking for those of you who are entrepreneurs and you're on this path, you're searching for answers, for momentum, for insight, for motivation, whatever the case may be. We've got a great conversation for you today as well. And I'm excited to be able to share that info with you. As always, our podcast is sponsored by my book, 7-Figure Circle, $1 Million Mastermind, the Facebook group, and my book, Breaking Orbit, Rip Out of the Regular by Unearthing the Power Within. I hate doing intros. I have to do it because we're sponsored and we got to sell some stuff at some point. But I also want you to know that these books and this group are powerful tools for you to be able to move your business forward in the way that you want to. We all started businesses because we want to create more freedom and impact in the world, and having the support to be able to do so with courses, with information, and understanding our one true gift in life that allows us to be singular and most powerfully impactful is something that I really want to be able to share with you. And so that's the goal of everything that we're doing here, to be able to allow you to continue to move forward in the best way possible. That being said, I want to welcome in our guest for today, none other than Mike Ciorrocco, also known as C-Roc, as you can see on the background behind him if you're watching this live on YouTube or on Facebook. An incredible entrepreneur. I'm very excited to have him as well. We're going to talk a little bit about his book. We're going to talk a little bit about the things he's got going on entrepreneurially and his story as well. But I want to, first of all, welcome you to the show. Welcome, Mike. How are you?
What's up, Frederick? Great to be here, man. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for your audience for listening. And if you're listening to the replay or the podcast, I appreciate you being here, man. And it means the world to me to have people to listen to my voice, my experiences. So thanks for having me, man.
And you've got quite your own share of experiences, man. First of all, tell people a little bit about yourself, what you do. How do you describe yourself when people ask you, what do you do, Mike?
Yeah, I do a lot of things, you know, and so instead of going over all the things that I do, I usually just talk about the mission that I'm on, which is all people are unstoppable to live in the life of their dreams. And I filter everything through that mission, whether it's my thoughts, words, actions, my environment, and my businesses, and everything goes through that mission. If it doesn't serve that mission, it has to leave, it has to exit. And sometimes it takes me a little time to find out what those things are. You know, if they're not a right fit, sometimes you got to wait for the symptoms of them being in the environment, and then you got to handle it. But at the end of the day, the intention is to get everything flowing in the direction of all people being unstoppable to live in the life of their dreams, because this life is too short to live otherwise. And you know, whether it's tech companies, the podcast agency that I started, People Building, mergers and acquisitions company that I just started, the Waymore Group, the mortgage company that I run with some of my best friends that I grew up with since I was 10, whether any of that, it all goes to being unstoppable.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit about your origin story. All superheroes have origin stories, and I'm sure you have one as well. Tell people where you were born and what it was like for you as a kid growing up.
Yeah, I was born outside of Philly. There's a place called Wilmington, Delaware. There used to be Wilmington Hospital. I was born there. I don't remember my parents ever together. My dad was a mason, hard worker, had his own business. I think he still is. I don't get to talk to him now, unfortunately. But my mom was, she worked for a company called DuPont. I don't know if you guys ever heard of DuPont.
Yeah.
And eventually took early retirement, became a nurse. But when I was a kid, she was a single mother. and I would go to my dad's house every other weekend. And, usually because my dad would work when the weather was good, I would go to my grandparents instead of his house because he'd be working a lot on those weekends when the weather was good, and I might see him for dinner. But my dad was always my hero, man. He was such a hard worker. I knew he loved money. He loved what money got him, but he also loved stacking it. And he used to tell me about that, But so when I got to about the age of 8 years old, my mom was moving on to her third marriage, and I was getting ready to move into another man's house. Didn't want to really learn another man's rules, moving with another man, like strange. Like I just didn't understand this at 8 years old. I'm trying to figure this out. So I decided to try my dad's house out. Right. And for about 3 years, I lived with my dad. But during that time, I went through a lot of abuse, a lot of, because look, when you have a broken home, there's child support, there's custody battles, you add step parents into the mix and all their baggage. Then you have other kids being born with different, and it's just, there's a lot of chaos. And here I'm the oldest kid trying to figure all this out. Right. And by the way, I know people have had it worse. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not complaining with this. I'm just sharing with you because since you asked, but there's a time where I decided to move in with my dad. And during that time, there was abuse. There was, my stepmother had some issues and she was jealous of my mom, I guess, or they had some conflict. And there was some fighting all the time, just all the time, conflict. And there was a period of time where I thought it was normal, but I started realizing, wait a minute, maybe this isn't normal to go through. I thought I just had to deal with it. And I eventually told my mom after I was at her house on a weekend, every other weekend thing. I was coming over these hills in southeastern Pennsylvania in the car, going back to my dad's house. My stomach was always anxious and sick to my stomach, knowing that I had to go back into that environment. My mom figured out one time and she asked me, what's going on? And I shared it with her, knowing that when I share this information, it could set off a bomb. You ever been in a situation where you know something or you're going through something and you just been keeping it secret just to keep the peace kind of thing, even though there wasn't peace? But I told her, and of course she lost her mind and said, hey, you're not going in that environment anymore. That's ridiculous. That's not normal. I'm going to file court papers. I'm going to get you back into my house. But if I do this, you need to stick to your guns that you want to do that, because they're going to try to talk you out of it. She also told me a lesson at that age, that when you're younger, when you get older, when you believe in something and you want something, you need to stick to your guns, because there's going to be people that try to talk you out of things. There's going to be people that try to discourage you for whatever reason. And that was a good lesson to learn at a young age. So long story short, my dad eventually got these court papers delivered. I got home from school one day. He sent me to my room, and I was like, oh boy, what's going to happen now? And I was about 10 years old at this time. So I'm sitting on my bed waiting for my hero to come back. And by the way, my dad, he used to have this wad of $100 bills in his pocket all the time. And he used to show us what money got. He used to show the $100 bills to us. And I thought that was the coolest thing when I was a kid. And there's a reason I'm telling you that, because when he came back and confronted me, he said, I don't understand why you want to move back with your mom. She doesn't have anything. She's got men coming in and out of the house every weekend. You don't have, you're not going to have all the stuff we have here. Why would you want to go back to that? And I think deep down he knew the deal, but I just didn't get into discussion with him. I knew I was going to stick to my guns. I'm like, I'm not discussing this. I made my mind up. This is what I want. Because, trying to point out things, all the things that were wrong, there's no sense in that.
Yeah.
And so then he goes, okay. So he takes that wad of $100 bills out. He peels one off. He crumpled it up, threw it at me. He said, here, you're going to need this then when you're living on the streets with your mother one day. And I said, oh boy, what did I do? That's like, I was like, this is not going to be good. And now you see those court papers were delivered, but I still had to live in the house until the court did their thing. And finally I did end up moving with my mom, and I ended up not seeing my dad for a while, and the family got, separated, and it was just a mess, man. It's just a mess. But growing up in that, though, knowing that my dad did that, I just knew for 30 some years I've been driving off this fact that I'm not going to need that $100 bill. Like I ain't going to need that money. I'll show you, kind of thing. Right. Which is kind of toxic in a way. And it does help in a way, get you somewhere, and eventually you got to move on to bigger motivators, but it worked good for a while. And so that's kind of where I came from. And there's a lot of things that have been layered on top of me, myself, the person I was born, just like all of us, experiences and all that stuff that just get layered up and cake up on you. And you get kind of get suppressed by it. And then you got to go and work personal development, looking for yourself again and peeling all the layers back. So it's a little bit about me, man.
No, I mean, if you don't mind, I like to pull on that thread a little bit, because, so a couple of things that are interesting about what you said, right? One is that, and I find myself doing this sometimes too, right? We qualify whatever our experiences are, our trauma. Sometimes, like, I know other people have had it worse, but when you're a kid and it's happening to you, right? I mean, it's valid to acknowledge what you've been through because a lot of those things shape us. And what I'm curious about for you is, how did that experience of going from an abusive environment where you had all the material things you needed to a more loving or safer environment where the material world was less, right? And if you can kind of thinking back now, in terms of the success that you've had, was there anything that you had to kind of navigate or overcome to be able to kind of realize your success without having to, if you will, go through some sort of scarcity mindset or something like that? I'm just curious how you start to interpret that.
Oh man, I think one of the things that as a kid, I dealt with that there, but then when you move in schools a lot, you start to deal with, kids are tough, right?
Right.
And the invalidation factor, you get invalidated. Like I've always known for some reason that I'm special. Like I'm gonna be something. I just knew. I don't know why, where that is, or why that's different for me than anybody else. I just always knew, that I was going to be special, and I didn't know what it was going to be in. I never grew big enough to play football and professional. I played college football, but I didn't know if it was going to be football. I also had a dream to be a sports broadcaster, like John Madden or something like that. And then I don't know what it was, but then eventually I just started to fall into what I'm doing now, right? Which is helping people start businesses and help build people. But I don't know, man. I think it was the invalidation factor that really I had to get over and really understand that what people's opinions of you, this really doesn't matter.
Right.
Because their opinion will change if you're consistent and you believe in yourself. If you lay a mission down and you go after it all out, committed, just ridiculously obsessed by it, you're going to push through all the people's opinions that usually would stop you, because eventually they get interested in what you're doing, even if they were discouraging you before and talking trash on you before and discouraging you, all that. Like eventually you stay to it enough, they get interested, and then they start wanting to be a part of it. And then they start wanting to be around you. Then they want to start opening businesses with you, which is what I'm experiencing now, by the way. I get opportunities thrown at me all the time. I got to learn to say no. And it's a great thing to have. And it can be distracting in a way, but it's because I pushed through despite all the things that I dealt with. And I just want to encourage everyone to do that. Like, don't let anybody else's opinion, nobody's opinion matters unless it's an opinion that's going to help you.
Yeah. When you were going through that period in high school and your younger years, was it a lot of bullying that you had to endure? And how did you kind of wrestle with that?
Yeah, so I did. Yeah, man. And I got in a lot of fights. I just didn't want to take crap. I just I got jumped a couple times, and I'm like, I'm not letting that happen again. And so then I would just fight my way out of situations. And then I would also get really good at explaining myself when I got into trouble, because anybody's in fight, both kids get in trouble, right? They try to figure it out. And right. I learned something, Frederick. I learned something at a young age where if you are proactive in ahead of time, building relationships with those in authority and getting on the right side of them, and then you end up getting in trouble, your story weighs more. So for example, I was really tight with the principal of the school. I would, help out any way I could, do different things around the school. I did the morning announcements all the time, the afternoon announcements. I was wanting to be in broadcasting anyway. And I just, was really respectful, but understanding that if you do this for people, and it's manipulating in a way, it is, I'll be honest, it's a manipulative thing, but not if you really care about those people and you really want to do something good for those people, because if you do that, then they're going to look out for you. But creating people that want to run through brick walls for you.
Yeah.
Right. And so it happens in business as well. Like a lot of people get annoyed by customers. They get annoyed by vendors that they got to deal with, this and that. Not me. I want to meet people and then make friends with people and build relationships with people and do things for people so that they want to run through walls for me when I need them. And I learned that at a young age. And it's funny. I didn't think about that before until you just brought that up.
Well, I'm always curious about that because, some of the experiences that we go through, a lot of times, you talked about the personal development stage. We start to unpack all the crap that we went through, but we don't think about sometimes how it also formed some good habits or some good things in our lives. And, you mentioned that your father loved stacking money, and obviously you've been able to start building some success in businesses as well. When did that entrepreneurial light flip on for you to start realizing, I could start doing this thing for myself and creating my own life forward?
It's funny. My parents, or my dad and my uncles and my grandfathers had their own businesses, right? They
Mm,
never really gave me any insight into it though. Like I
mm,
never saw behind the scenes besides working, like doing the job, And I didn't see the idea, then the marketing and sales, and I didn't see all that part. And so not having that, I got into sales in 1998 and I went and did in-home sales, and I was in that mind frame of working for someone, building someone else's dream, right?
mhm,
And then in about 2010, 2011, I started to see the inside workings of a business and how it worked. And I
mm,
started paying attention, and I heard other people starting businesses, and I learned more and I asked questions. And I started understanding that, wait a minute, I don't have to be the one on the grind all the time, doing the one-on-ones with the customers and all that. I don't have to do that. I can really create an opportunity to scale and build out, take a smaller piece per transaction, but have a lot more of them transactions.
right,
And so I
right.
started to really understand scaling a business. And then I was like, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go back to being a solo person or working for someone and being a one person salesperson. It's just not going to happen. And now I've seen
Mm,
too much. Like I had the curtain pulled up. And once I realized that, I started, I was in the mortgage business at that time and as a loan officer and managing people and this and that. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go start opening our own branches. And my partner,
mm,
Chris, and I started to do that. And we went out and started with one. It was just the two of us. We started adding people, training them, getting them trained, and then started building people. And then before you know it, we had 7 branches, 50 some employees. It's a lot lighter now because of the market, but we've been up to as many as 7 branches and 50 some employees, and
mm,
always looking to grow beyond that. But what I did, Frederick, I'll tell you this real quick too. When I got to a point where I was doing the 7 branches, 50 employees, and I started realizing I didn't own the business. I was
mm,
still working for someone else. I was under an umbrella of a company that let us run a profit and loss or P&L underneath of it in the mortgage space. And so I
mm,
didn't have an asset. I had a
mm,
cash flow machine, cash flowing. However, I wasn't able to sell that. I was building something that I couldn't sell. And I had
yeah.
to start having a problem with that. So that's when my mind started thinking to myself, okay, I got to start expanding out from this and start building assets, which I own and I have the ability to sell.
Mm,
And so that's been the last 3 or 4 years is what I've been working on. And then now I'm going to also we're looking at buying cash flow businesses that are already started instead of starting from scratch, and then
mm,
making them better and build a portfolio of companies like that, and then be able to exit those as well. So it's been a transformation. It's been an evolution for me, just being able to see things and having like the curtain pulled up and I'm like, oh, that's how that works.
mm.
A lot of times we look at things and we don't really understand how it's working. We think it's one way. And then when we realize it's really the way it is, it's like, oh, I can do that. And you
Give me
get
an
knowledge.
example of Give me an example, if you can, of something that you kind of you realized, oh, this is how this works, and it kind of
Yeah.
opened up a whole new door for you.
Yeah. Let's talk about the tech companies that I'm involved with, not knowing anything about coding or tech or any of that stuff. I thought you needed to
Mhm.
know that kind of stuff. I thought you needed to be a coder, and come to
Right,
find out, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know what you want, the vision that you want. And then you need to go find out the people that you need to fulfill the areas that you don't know how to do, or you need to lean into it and learn the things you don't know.
right.
And so I thought I was not able to be a tech founder because I didn't grow up in tech. I didn't go to school for tech, right? Um, Buying a business, like, do you need money to buy a business? No, you don't need money to buy a business. You need a vision and you need to know how, and then you can go find money, or you can do creative financing with the seller of the business. And
Mhm.
once you figure that out, then it's just a numbers game to go find the businesses that'll work out with that. And then if you also have a vision and you lay the plan out of how you're going to get to where you're going, and it could be a basic plan for right now, it doesn't have to be set in stone, but you do something like this and you're going to go buy businesses that are cash flowing. That's a pretty lucrative opportunity for investors. So investors start coming to you without you even asking them, when you just start talking about what you're doing. And they're like, well, do you need some money? Because they're looking
Mhm.
for places to put money.
Right.
So yeah, those are some examples.
Was tech the space that you started to pivot into from the loan mortgage business? And if so, can you or whatever it was. Just tell us a little bit about that pivot into owning your own and building your own asset.
No, the pivot started with kind of coaching and consulting. I was already doing it for my company, but I felt like I was playing too small of a game. So I just decided to start People Building and People Building Inc. And it's a corporation that I started for building people, whether it's coaching, consulting, or podcast agency, PR agency, getting people known, getting their story out. And that's the first step I took. And then that started with a podcast, going on other people's shows. I've done over 400 podcasts on other people's shows in the last 3 years, over 300 of my own episode. And so in doing that, I started getting known, and I wrote this book back here, Rocket Fuel. I started hanging out in different communities, getting known in these different communities, paying homage to those that I learned from, never forgetting where I came from. As far as, you know, I was in a 10X community hanging out with Grant Cardone and his crew and learning a lot from all of them. And, you know, that really up-leveled me. And being around, you know, people like Grant and other people, you get altitude, you get leverage from that. And I'm just not one of those people that will ever forget that. Although I did pay money for a lot of the programs and all that, it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is I understand where people have helped me in the past, and I'll just never forget that. I always pay homage to those that, you know, allowed me to stand on their shoulders, so to speak.
I love what you're talking about, you know, how people can up-level you being in their vicinity, right? In the proximity of greatness. What was one of the things that maybe you was caught, not necessarily taught, but you just observed by being in that space with other successful entrepreneurs? It could be from Grant or from anyone.
Man, there's so much. There's so much. Let me see.
Don't hold back.
I'll start with one was that when you see, I felt like an oddball for a while because I felt like I want to go big. I want to do big things, man. I'm destined. I know I have something in me that needs to get out there. And then the people around you are like, you're crazy, you're obsessed, or you know, they say all these things. And they're satisfied with the way their life is, maybe just gradually getting better, or they get to a certain level and then they're satisfied. I'm not satisfied, man. I'm grateful for everything I have. I just want to do everything that I was put here to do with the abilities that I was put here to do. And so what I did was, I realized one thing I took away was that I'm not the crazy one. I'm not a crazy one. Like, people around me were confused. Yeah. They were confused. They thought that good enough is good enough. And I'm just not like, okay with that. Good enough is not good enough. You know, we were put here, Frederick, we're put here with a certain potential and ability and a purpose. And if you do not serve that and go after that, that to me is what sin is all about. You know, like people that are religious, and if you're Christian or whatever religion you're in, you talk about sin. Sin to me is not going after your potential and being okay with just settling. It makes me sick to my stomach to think about it. That I think people start to die and decay when they stop creating. And so that's one thing I learned. I also learned to think big because we have no idea what our potential truly is. So why would you put a limit on what you could do? Not because, you know, and you're in a situation you really don't know the limits. So how the heck are you going to put a limit on yourself? I also pay attention to the people that I look at these people and I realize, wait a minute, if they can do it, I can do it. And I realize they're human beings. When I start hanging out with people that are billionaires and have had super success, I start realizing that they're just human beings, just like me. They just have a certain quality that they go after things and they commit and they don't quit. And they're relentless. And they understand failure is just something that you do to gather data, to learn, to keep going. And nothing's ever final until you're plucked from this planet. You know, like these are all things I've seen and from interviewing people, hanging out with people. You know, I mean, there's so much, man. I mean, that's just, I'll give you just that. Well, one more thing I'll tell you. You have the ability to elevate other people by the energy that you put up. So in other words, like if you get your head right and you're high emotionally, always exhilarated, man, just fired up all the time, the people around you will feel that, and it can actually affect them, not just your words talking to them, but the energy that you put off. I've proven this. And when you can become a person that elevates people by them being in your environment, in your field, so to speak, when you know that, it's very powerful. And then it comes with a big responsibility, because when I don't feel like it, or if it gets hard, I need to do it anyway. I have to, because I have obligation to the people in my field. What I mean by that, my environment, right? My energy field. What else? Yeah. I mean, there's so much, man.
What was it like for you when you first entered that space? You know, you talked about being around people who didn't believe in you or thought you were crazy. What was that? Was it a rush? Was it and I know in some places it can be traumatic for some people, like, you know, it blows their mind. And you talked about the fact that you you almost felt like you didn't belong where you were. What was it like when you walked into those rooms for the first time and just kind of breathed that different type of air?
Well, are you talking about with a different type that people actually started to believe in you kind of thing? Or
Yeah,
you talk, yeah.
right.
Well, being around people that think the same way as you do is huge, because see, energy has to be flowing in the same direction. As soon as something's going in the opposite direction, it slows things down, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, I just it is like a breath. It's really refreshing. It's like a breath of fresh air when you get around people that are thinking the same way as you, and you start to realize, like, wait a minute, this is the way it's supposed to be. Like, what's going on here? And you don't really want to go back to the other way. Like basically bust through a ceiling and you're like, no, I'm not going back the other way. And then the people that are down, like where you just left, they either need to get on board or they're just going to get left behind. There's going to be a gap develops because I'm not going back, kind of thing. Right. And then sometimes you find yourself getting sucked back into it, like, because everybody has their problems and everybody goes through different things and the economy affects different things and people start to get sucked back into that. And then you start to feel the pull, and you just got to make sure that you remember the fact that like you're on a mission, and you're not being stopped no matter what. You're not going to be stopped, you know? So, yeah, I mean, you know, and also like taking trips to LA and Miami, you know, Scottsdale now, like going to different places and seeing what's out there and what's available. Stop just staying in your own little world. You start seeing what's available to you. You start wanting that stuff. I'm not talking about material stuff. I'm just talking about success and, you know, beauty, aesthetics, like different things. Like, you don't need to live where you live right now that you just because you grew up there. You can go in and go find, do whatever you want. You're put on this planet to do what you want to do. You know?
I love that. I love that. I'm curious too. You mentioned your partner, Chris, who started the loan mortgage business with, and partnerships, right? So partnerships are a lot like marriage, you know, when it comes to business, and picking the right partner and navigating the challenges that kind of go through that can be its own hurdle. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience has been like for you, things that you learned maybe, and some advice you might give someone who's in a partnership and trying to navigate that whole relationship?
Yeah. So, you know, working not just partnerships, but partnerships with friends or family is just totally different dynamics, right?
Mm,
But you, first of all, if you decide to do it, you know, you got to understand that, hey, this is what you're in. You chose this, you got to take responsibility for it. And there's going to be times where people work harder than others, they produce more than others, and you got to be okay with it. You know, but my thing in business and partnerships is I always want to be the one producing the most. And not so that I can hold it over someone's head, but just I don't want to be in a position where I'm underachieving or in debt. That's not a position that I want to be in.
mm,
So, but yeah, I mean, you just gotta, the hardest thing is holding people accountable, holding each other accountable. And you really can't do that until you hold yourself accountable. So when you're into partnerships, it's important that you master the self-accountability, self-leadership thing, because you will not hold other people accountable until you hold yourself accountable. And so there's different dynamics. Like I learned this, like you have the first dynamic is yourself, right? And then the second dynamic is your family, your spouse, your kids. Third dynamic is a group, company, and it goes all the way up to 8 dynamics to spiritual, right? But let's just start for a second and talk about the first, second, and third dynamics. Yourself, you need to be able to handle yourself before you can have a handle on a family. And if you have no handle and mastery on yourself or your family, you're going to have problems in a business or a group setting or a team setting. All these things affect each other. If you start doing, you know, no good in the group setting, it's going to affect your individuality and you're going to affect your family. So you got to pay attention to these different dynamics. And so first it starts with the first dynamic yourself. And that's why self-improvement, self-mastery is so important, and self-leadership. And then that leads into having great partnerships, but you can't have a great partnership if you're not taking care of yourself. And that's what I've seen in my partnerships that I've had. There's been varying degrees of taking care of the first dynamic, which is affecting the second and the third dynamics.
I think that's really, really key. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, right, and you can speak to this, right? A lot of us think that by fixing our business, it fixes our lives, right? So if I make enough money, everything else will come together. My wife will be happy, my kids will be taken care of, etc. What have you learned in that regard? You know, that whole dynamic of, handling yourself, but having the proper perspective around business and the vital relationships that make us human, that make us whole.
I'll go back to the same thing I just said, the dynamics. It's all the dynamics. You got to make sure you're good on across as many dynamics as possible. So the answer, when you run into a conflict and you're wondering, like, what is the answer? How should I handle this? It's got to be the answer that serves the most dynamics, the individual, the family, the business. So if you're in the business setting and you're just making money and you're successful, but you neglect the first dynamic yourself, could be your health, exercise, diet, sleep, right? It's not gonna work. If you neglect your family, you neglect your wife, but you're successful in that third dynamic in your business, in the group, the team setting, it's not gonna work. So you have to make sure that it's all across all areas of your life. You cannot sacrifice that. That's something that's been really clearly identified to me. Early on in my life and my relationship, I didn't do that. I wasn't paying attention to myself. I drank. I was overweight. I wasn't exercising early on in my business career. I didn't understand how to be a good husband, good father. I tried. I just didn't know what I was doing. And then I would make money and have good business success, but it would be hampered and limited by those first two dynamics. And that's not a good thing. So once I started realizing, wait a minute, okay, I got to be good across all of these. And if I do all of these, they all work together and there's an exponential effect. That's when everything changed.
You talked a little bit about that, right? About not knowing how to be a good husband or father. Where did you find the insight, the wisdom, the help to start making that shift in that area? And how would you grade yourself so far?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a Christian, so I've read the Bible, right? And I've read it several times, and I do Bible, what are they called? Those Bible plan things on the Bible app.
Yeah.
But sometimes still I don't understand all the things I was reading. And so I started paying attention to some of my mentors and seeing what they've been doing. And then I heard Grant talk about his church. And I'm like, I wonder what he's talking about, his church. And then he started talking about like 97% of his success or more comes from everything he learned in his church. And I'm like, what is that? So I found out what it was. It was the Church of Scientology. And I started I've heard some things about that. And I never really investigated what it is because of the things I heard. And I said, you know what? I'm going to read the books. Let me give me a book that I can start with, and let me just see what this is about. So, because I wanted to make my own judgment. I was like, I'm not going to just listen to everybody else or what I see on TV. So I read this book called Dianetics. And when I read this book, it blew my mind. And I was like, how have I not heard about this? And how have I kept myself from this based on what other people say on a TV or whatever the case is? And I just started thinking to myself, I'm going to explore this more to find out really what this is all about, because immediately reading the book, it started to help me. And one of the lessons was those dynamics I just talked about. And so I started reading more. I started talking to the people that work where they publish these books. And I started like asking questions about it. I went back, Frederick, and read the Bible, and the Bible made sense to me. I saw things I never saw before. And that's where it all started for me. And so I just started completing more and more books and courses, visiting the centers and having work done, which they call processing. And then going back to my religion. And see, I don't know about religion. It's not as important to me as spirituality. Understanding that this is just a vehicle that I'm here with, and my vessel that I'm here on this planet with, and I've been sent. I have a spirit. You know, I'm a spiritual being, and understanding how that works, and it just changes everything. And understanding how powerful you actually are, it's unbelievable, man. And I really get upset with the fact of how I let myself. I say I get upset, but I mean, I just think about it like, how did I not let myself learn about this sooner?
Mm.
because I look at not for myself and my family, but I could help so many more people than I have already.
Well, I think it's interesting when you say that because I think anytime you come up against new knowledge that is so transformative for you, right? You kind of have that sense of regret, but I also started thinking about it in terms of the fact that we had to be where we are to make that new knowledge significant to us,
Well,
right?
that's true. Yeah.
And then when we make that transformation, now we know the value of it because before we weren't ready to receive it and then we couldn't actually implement it, but now we can see the difference, the gap between what it was. And so I think that probably helps you to be even better at what you do, because when you're looking at someone who is where you were before, right? Maybe someone who is a successful business wise but sucked as a dad or as a husband, right? And you can say, hey, look, let me just share with you what I've learned, right? And so now you help them to kick that into gear, and life becomes that much more meaningful. So, and I can truly say, having listened to you on Clubhouse and watch just how you move in business and social media, there's integrity that certain people move with, right? You can kind of tell when people are kind of, I mean, you can't always tell, but what I've seen from you seems to be consistent across the board. And I think that's really a testament to the things that you learned and the things that you live. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show. I like to kind of uh, help share with my audience, but people that really have all of those different components in place. So, and there is a question somewhere, but what is it that you would say has been one of the most significant shifts, or the how do I want to put it, the elevation, if you will, from one step to the next in terms of implementing all those dynamics together?
I think the decision I made to get known, back in 2017, I had this itch that I gotta get speaking. I gotta get known. Like I gotta tell people about what I know and this power I figured out, and I want to learn more about it. And so I made a decision to get known, and I was focused so hard in this local market, trying to get known on the local market level. And I was like, if I could put the same effort into thinking bigger, it might work. So I started thinking, like, let me get known globally. How am I going to do that? Well, I had no idea how I was going to do it. I just said, let me get known globally. And then I found out about podcasting. And when I found out about podcasting, somebody invited me on their show. I had no idea what it was. I didn't even know what a podcast was. I heard of them, but I didn't know what it was. I'm like, I don't even have equipment for this. I don't know if I can do that. And then the guy's like, Chris, his name is Chris. He's like, yeah, you can do it. I'm going to give you a list. Don't worry. Just show up. I'll interview you. And he made me feel special, man. It was like he was interviewing me. I felt like important all of a sudden. And I'm like, I could do this. I could do this a lot. So I leaned into doing that. And then I developed my own show, What Are You Made Of?, which is on Fireside, the Fireside app. Check that out. I wrote a book. And in doing that and putting myself out there, Frederick, it came with a heavy responsibility of being ethical. Because when you're in hiding and you're not seen or whatever, you can be unethical because nobody's going to know about it except for some of the people maybe locally around you. But when you put yourself out there, and this is why it's so dangerous for some people, and some people get in trouble because they don't understand this point, that you need to make sure your ethics are in check. You need to make sure you're doing things the way they're supposed to be done, because when you're out there, it's a lot more exposed and dangerous, and you can also impact a lot more people. So for me, I think doing that and becoming a celebrity in my space, so to speak, or out there known, has required a level of ethics for me, because I don't want to disappoint anybody in that manner. I mean, if somebody has expectations and I disappoint them based on their expectations, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about disappoint by hurting someone, being unethical, not doing what I said I was going to do. Those are just not options for me.
Do you remember the moment when that realization hit you, and the weight, why it carried so much weight to realize I've got to be everything that I say I am?
I've always think I've had a good line of ethics in me. I just, specific time. I think I just watched. Well, yeah, I don't know if it's specific time.
Well, the reason why I asked that question is because sometimes it can come when you are looking at someone else. Like, so somebody maybe that you've met that you looked up to or you thought was at a certain place, and then they did something or said something that said, maybe they're not all there, or you've
Yeah.
experienced, like sometimes you had it happen to you, right? Somebody that you met and they let you down
Yeah. Yeah.
personally.
Yeah. 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 So sometimes we put our heroes and mentors and icons on pedestals.
Mhm.
And that's one thing about what you learn when you're studying Christianity is Jesus was the only one that was really perfect. And
Right.
everybody else is designed to have flaws, to be working and striving towards perfection, hopefully. But
Mhm.
you start seeing that you would meet people for the first time that you only saw through TV or social media or on sports or what have you, and they would disappoint you.
Mhm.
So no, I'm not a perfect person. However, I don't want to disappoint people. Like when people meet me, they may realize that I'm shorter than I appear anywhere else. They might say, "Yeah, man, I thought you were taller," and they might think that I always get that, and I get, "Man, that's your wife," because my wife's beautiful, man, inside and out. But I get that sometimes. I'm like, "What do you mean? I got game," but no. But I don't want them to be disappointed. So I want to try to be as authentic as I can, as real as I can. I don't hold back, by the way. You've heard
Mhm.
me on Clubhouse. Like I tell it like it is. I'm transparent. I tell people what I'm going through because when they meet me, I want them to feel. And I've heard this before. Like C-Roc, I feel like I've known you for years,
Mhm.
and that's what I
Mhm.
want. I don't want it to be a different like this person here, and then you meet me in person. It's totally different. That's not going to happen. I want to be real. Let's put it that way. And it's an intention to do that.
There's a couple of different ways I want to go with this, but I want to kind of tap into you talking about your wife there, right? Um, this really has nothing to do with business per se, but it talks about that dynamic. What is one of the things that you've learned about being a successful husband as you've grown in your marriage, right? Because there are those of us as men who are in business, and we kind of have this sense sometimes, well, if I can just make enough money, it'll fix everything else. My wife won't have to complain, etc. But maybe can you share one of the lessons that you learned as a man about navigating that space, leading your family in your marriage?
Yeah, a couple things. One, communication, the cause of all problems, and it's the solution of all problems. So
Mm,
that's number one. Number two, I always look inside. Like if I see something that's annoying me, right, about my wife, right, or something, I always figure, okay, what's going on with me that's causing that?
mm,
Because see, I think people are a reflection of you, what you got going on inside. And so
right.
that's helped me a lot. When she starts to do something and I'm like, why is she doing that or whatever, it's like, okay, what's going on in my life right now? What's going on in my mind? And so I
Mm,
self-reflect. And so if my wife starts to get, you know, uh, can I cuss on here? She starts to get a little witchy. I'd
mm,
start thinking, okay, what's going on for me that's causing this? Because I feel like I'm at cause. So I take
mm,
responsibility. I think that's the
mhm.
biggest things that have helped me is taking responsibility and making sure that I communicate effectively.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I think anytime, especially, it's one of the things you learn as an entrepreneur is that you have the ability to impact things by taking responsibility. You can create that solution. You can take that same, and what I'm taking from what you're saying, is you can take that same mindset into your marriage and into your family.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And so to
Oh
pivot
man.
off of that in a different direction, you started taking responsibility. You said, "Let me get more known in my space." And I have two questions about this. One, what has been the difference since you made that intentional leap, to start getting on these 400 plus podcasts and to become more well known? And secondly, what would you advise some entrepreneur or leader when they are looking to be able to start making that leap themselves?
Well, the network has grown. Like podcast hosts are some of the most connected people on the planet. So
Mm,
the network that I have available to me now is I don't know, it's endless. I don't think that there's anybody on the planet that's untouchable that I couldn't get in touch with if I really wanted to try to do so. And so
mhm,
that's helped big time. And when I first started this, Frederick, I didn't know what to do with this network I was building. I heard the
mhm,
term, your network is your net worth and all that. And I was like, well, yeah, but what does that mean? Like, how can I increase my net worth with this? Like, so I started focusing on building relationships, people that align with me and I vibed with. I've really worked on building relationships with those people and just seeing ways and seeking out ways that I could help. And then once I started to do that, I started thinking, I still like, how can I help this person? And then I
mhm,
started grinding on that. And then I talked to a mentor and they're like, no, you don't need to grind on how to help someone. It'll pop up. long as you're on a mission and you're meeting people, it'll pop up how you can help them and how they can help you. And so I just had to have some, like, insert some patience. And another mentor of mine, actually it wasn't a mentor, but it was a friend of mine that, let's see, who was it? It was Brian Smith, the founder of UGG boots. He said to me, you cannot give birth to an adult. So stop trying to give birth to an adult. And he also told me that tadpoles have to be tadpoles before they're frogs. Can't just become a frog. And so I just started to understand that. I'm like, okay, I got to just have some patience. Even though I feel like my window's shortening because I'm 45 and who knows how long we got on this planet. I want to move. I want to move. I want to move. And so that's why the hat says thrust is a must. I want to move fast, but there has to be some patience. When you have patience, then things start to evolve. And one other thing I'll tell you, I started doing something recently that is just powerful. And I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't do this before. I used to write my goals down in the mornings, and I just stopped doing that recently and started writing stories. Every morning I just take a page out of this notepad. A guy told me this. He said, this is what I do, and this is you'll be amazed at the magic of it, or the power of it, whatever you want to call it. But like this page right here, that's one page, right? Every day I just fill one page up and I just tell a story about a guy, whatever's on my mind at that time of my desires. And then I become that guy. I go be that guy. And every morning I do that. It literally takes me 3 to 5 minutes to do it because I write fast. It doesn't have to be legible, whatever. It's stream of consciousness. I get it out and I'll get it on the page. And then all of a sudden, man, let me tell you, I cannot, like, it's just wild. I've only been doing this for about 3 or 4 days now. The things that started to appear in my life almost immediately that I wasn't even sure how it got there. It's literally blowing my mind. I shouldn't let it blow my mind because I know this works. This stuff works. I've seen it work for other people. I understand how being intentional and getting things on paper work. But man, just things start to come in place. Let me just tell you, when you're vibing on the right frequency and you're doing the things that you need to do, God works in mysterious ways, man.
I love that because, and I think you'll appreciate this as a religious person, right? So I've really been kind of
a religious person who cusses.
Hey, you catch me on the basketball court on a few good days, you know. Yeah. But I mean, even that part, right? So the fact that how powerful words are, right? Like in the Hebrew language, like words weren't just words; they're symbols. So every letter represents something specific, and so when you verbalize it, I think one of the most powerful things about the Christian religion is the concept that God breathed life into Adam and he became a living soul. Like God's breath is in us. And so every time we breathe or we speak something into existence, it actually is the power of creation through our words. But the fact that you can speak it, you can think it, or you can write it. And literally all of those things all come from an idea that brings life to something. I love that, what you're talking about with the story. I don't even really have a question about that, but that's a reflection of what you're saying. What do you think about that concept? Why do you think it's been so powerful?
I think it's getting really clear because I think every day we deal with everyday problems, present time problems that are like clouding your judgment up, clouding your vision up. And I think that it gets you back on track and really clear on what you really desire. And your desires are important, man. Your desires is what's put into you. To me, like that's the way God speaks to you. And then you should go after your desires. But when we have all these present time problems and distractions, it gets in the way. So I think it's a powerful thing to put your attention back where your attention needs to be. After I write that story, I go about my day. And then throughout my day, the day happens like it normally would happen. But my perception based on my attention units, where we only have so many attention units that we can put on things, where my attention is focused, I'm seeing those things that are already there. They're probably there all the time. Right. But now I'm seeing them and I'm aware of them. And then now I can use them and, to fulfill the desires that I have. So I think that's where the power is.
I love that. I love that. I mean, we've got just a few minutes left, but I want to kind of lean into that. What for you is your next desire. You talked about the fact that you feel and believe that you're destined for big things. You talk about the fact that you have this sense of urgency. Thrust is a must. What is that big thing for you? Where would you like to be? Where would you love to be in the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years?
Well, I want to have, I have these companies that I'm building. I want to have exits, and the exits need to be 9-figure exits, at least one. I want to build this mergers and acquisitions company to a $500 million valuation. And I want to be in movies and TV. I don't want to just appear in them. I want to be a star. And also, one other thing is I want to help people get their messages out. Like, I want to help thousands and thousands of people get their messages out and become celebrities in their spaces, and show them how to do that, and give them the confidence that they need to accomplish any desire that they have. So that's what I'm working towards.
I love it. What do you see as the biggest hurdle or challenge for you to get there?
That would be the guy you're looking at. It's all the only limitation is what I allow. Nothing else can stop me. Nothing else can stop me. Nothing else can stop you. Nothing else can stop anyone. It's themselves. And I realize that. And so that's why I'm constantly working on myself. I'm constantly doing what I need to do to take care of this first dynamic so that I can hammer the other dynamics in a good way. And that's the focus. And so I just know there's nobody on this planet that's going to stop me once I get me out of the way.
There is a version of you that's out here listening to this or watching this right now. What is the message that you would leave with them to be able to make that next leap in their business and in their life?
I just tell them I got you. You can count on me, man. Like, I'm the guy to bet on. I'm built for it. I'm made for it. And there's nobody better than me to accomplish what we're about to accomplish. So count on me.
Mm-hmm. What I love is the sense of certainty that you say that with, right? And that's a powerful thing. It's not a doubt. It is who you are.
Maybe I say that and I have to do that because there is doubt and everybody has it. And I just go after it anyway, like on top of it, pour the gravy on top of it to cover it up, to smother it, smother the doubt, starve the doubt, right? Like, that's what you have to do. And in doing that, when people hear that, it helps them, which is a good thing.
That's powerful. Mike, tell people where they can reach you, how they can find out more information about you, and if they want to get connected with you in any way.
Well, look, I want to give my book for free to your listeners, and that's Mike C-Roc with no K, just MikeCROC.com/free book, MikeCRoc.com/free book. You can go get the book Rocket Fuel for free. And also, I'm on Instagram, Twitter. Mikey C-Roc is my handle, and Clubhouse, of course, the C-Roc Experience Club. We're growing a great community of unstoppable people. And so those are the places they find me the easiest.
MikeCRoc.com/free book. It's really, I appreciate the generosity, man. I appreciate the time. You dropped a ton of wisdom, a lot of stuff, a lot of great quotables. I'm going to be going back and listening to this and just pulling it out, because I think you said some stuff that was subtly very, very powerful and overtly mind-blowing as well. So I appreciate that. Any last words you want to share with the fam, the people before you?
Yeah, man. Thrust is a must. Be unstoppable, and then come find me. Thank you so much, Frederick. I appreciate you, brother.
I love it. I love it. For those of you who've been watching this live, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, or appreciate you for stopping by, whether for a second or for the full hour. As always, this is a powerful, powerful place to be able to share and live your dreams. We want to support you in all that way. For C-Roc and myself, I'm Frederick Douglass Bussey. Ever forward.